This is Polyend Play Plus. It was officially announced just a few months ago, and quite surprisingly, it was one of the most controversial releases of 2023, which is quite remarkable in a year marked by teenage engineering's infamous Fadergate debacle. The backlash to it was so great, it even made one of SynthTube's most beloved creators swear off making gear reviews. Hi everybody and welcome back. In this video, I want to talk about the Play Plus beyond the spec sheet, from a regular user's point of view, from someone who is already familiar with the original Play. I'll also tell you what I think about the whole marketing ordeal and maybe a few thoughts on how, in hindsight, it could have been maybe handled a bit better. Now before we start, I want to make a very important disclaimer, and that is that over the years, Polyend have sent me lots of gear to review, including the Polyend Play Plus over here. And I know that that's going to make lots of you watching this think that I'll be pulling my punches in this review, but rest assured, even though I very much appreciate them for their continued support and would of course love to keep working with them, the minute that I fail to point out the flaws in a device in a review I make is the moment that this channel becomes irrelevant. So strap in, because here we go. Let's start out on a positive note with what's really good about the Polyend Plus. The new synths sound awesome. There's a limit to how far you can take a sample, especially melodically, and one of the reasons that I love boxes like the MPC, the Deluge, or the Dirty Wave M8 is because when you hit that roadblock with a sample, you can always fall back on the internal synths, or you can sample something directly into them. Now, since you can't directly sample into the Play or the Play Plus, not having synths usually became a painful omission each time I would use the original away from a computer. Adding synths to the Play Plus was pretty much a logical step, and I really hope we get these synths and maybe more in a future version of the Tracker or the Tracker Mini. I'm very happy to say that the internal synths on the Play Plus carry quite the punch and hold their own very well against the competition. Currently on the Play Plus you get 4 synth engines, each with their own distinct character and set of parameters, and I'll demo some of them for you here. Also, I can't not mention that the delay and the reverb on the original Play sounded beautiful, and when you add them into the internal synths, things get very beautiful very fast. Now, I will touch on what it's like to edit patches in a bit, but for those who are not sound design inclined, I'm happy to report that the Play Plus comes with a huge selection of presets to choose from. At the very least, you get a great roster of presets to use as a starting point to make the exact patch that you're looking for. Now, as I've said in many videos before, the sound is only half the fun in a hardware synth. The second thing that has to be on point is the user interface. As far as that goes, currently you can assign up to 6 macros to the knobs on the current firmware. That makes actually playing around with the synths live a much more fluid experience, even though it seems a bit limited that you can only use 3 knobs when you have so many more just looking at you at the face. Hopefully, in future firmware versions, we'll be able to unlock the Play Plus's full potential regarding hands-on control, but I'll touch on that on the cons section. Another notable improvement over the original that didn't get enough attention in my opinion was that we now have stereo samples. And even though the effects on both the Play and Play Plus are stereo and sound great, it's still a huge plus, pardon the pun, that you can import stereo samples that have already been processed in other more complex effects chains without losing that stereo audio field. Another major talking point about the Play Plus is that you can now send over multiple audio tracks over USB. For people using iPads for effects processing, this is a huge win, as you can now further process individual tracks via USB. Especially since this thing can be powered with a smartphone, it just makes for an incredibly powerful portable setup. Okay, so that's all good, but now let's look at the bad. For me at least, what really made the Polyends stand out above the competition wasn't the randomization or generative features, as we have seen this in other boxes that offer similar functions, but no. what made the Polyend play truly special and fun AF, as the kids say these days, was its performance mode. In performance mode, you can literally spend hours tweaking the most boring of tracks into an insane and dynamic performance by just hitting the right button at the right time, or even the wrong button at the right time, or wrong time. So imagine my surprise when I innocently tapped the performance mode in synth mode and nothing happened. Nothing. I really do hope that this is way up there on the list of future features, because not being able to select the performance mode while on synth mode is kind of like having a Ferrari that can only do left turns. I mean, you still can't get around it. It is a Ferrari, but it's obvious that it's missing something vital. And since we're talking about driving anyway, the navigation between the synth mode, the sample mode, and the performance mode feels very clunky and disjointed, as you can't jump directly from one to the other, and instead you have to bounce from synth to sample mode and then to performance mode. A very simple tweak like direct access from performance mode to synth mode, even if it's not enabled in synths, would be a huge improvement for live performance workflows. Editing and saving patches. No, I did a Trump there. Editing and saving patches. Now, as you may have already seen in other Play Plus videos, in order to edit patches in synth modes, you'll have to modify parameters and assign mods from a big list. Not the most fluid or fun or exciting of experiences, but Polyend were smart enough not to fill this with submenus, so once you get the hang of it, it's not actually that bad. Especially since, as I said before, the presets are really good, so I rarely find myself changing more than one or two, maybe three things here and there to get the sound exactly the way I want it. Another thing that bugs me, and that might be just subjective, is that in synth mode, this thing follows the same pick and place philosophy of the original play regarding sample placements on the steps. Basically, you can grab any sound and put it anywhere on the grid. There are no dedicated tracks, and I can see how this can be a very good advantage on the workflow when using random samples. But my mind really struggles to do this when using synth engines. And I know that this really comes down to personal taste, and I can fully understand if lots of you will disagree with me, but I would really love the option of using the good old assigned tracks, at least in synth mode. Because I've had multiple instances where I accidentally switched the synth that I wanted to assign to a step, and I started tweaking the wrong synth, so being able to lock a synth to one track would be a huge advantage for someone like me with 2 kids and chronic sleep deprivation. Okay, so after talking about the good, the bad, let's take off the kid gloves and let's talk about the ugly. I would be remiss if I didn't point out the bugs. If you're into video games at all, you know that bugs are just a part of life nowadays. As games have gotten more and more complex, the bigger the title, the more bugs you can expect from it. Now, I'm not sure if this is true for hardware synths necessarily, but at least in the case of the Play Plus, it was definitely something I noticed. Now, I'm not saying that it had Starship Trooper level of hordes of bugs, but enough bugs to keep a small pet lizard happy, for sure. I never lost a session or got to a point where I had to scrap a project because I had lost files or whatever, but it definitely is something that Polyend need to focus on fixing. Finally, the big one, because there's really no way that I can talk about the Play Plus without addressing the initial launch campaign, where the original Play was discounted to almost half the price, and the new Play could be upgraded to the Plus if you pay $399 plus shipping and associated import-export taxes. I know this is controversial, but I do think that Polyend's intentions were in the right place, even though their execution was misguided. And to make my point, let's just take a moment to compare the launch of the OP1 Field and the OLED Deluge. In the case of the OP1 Field, there was no upgrade path that I know of, and the new unit cost about double the original. After some huge backlash, Teenage Engineering just stuck to their guns, and they didn't really address the existing customer base that felt looked over. And that was that. End of story. On the other end of the spectrum, you have Synthstrom, who, on announcing their new OLED Deluge, offered an upgrade for something like $150 and also announced that there would be a gradual incremental increase of the price in the coming months, so people could have a chance to buy their Deluges before the price went way up, setting a totally new precedent to brand customer relationships in our little slice of the world. I really think that they were trying to go the Synthstrom approach with this one. However, by lowering the price of the original Play, that unit now had a resale value of less than half of the original price, and if you tried to upgrade it and you factored in the initial cost, a refurbished Play Plus would have cost you around $1,100 plus shipping. Quite ironically, the people that this campaign was hurting the most were the established user/fan base, which I would think is the last group of people that any brand would intentionally want to antagonize. So the question is, what could have been done to avoid this whole scenario? As the old expression goes, hindsight is 20/20. So after all that happened, here's what I think might have worked a bit better instead. First step, temporarily pull out the original Plays from store shelves. MPC have actually done this a couple of times. Before the MPC Live 2 came out, the MPC 1 was nowhere to be found. The MPC X started running out of stock, and suddenly MPC X SE came out. You could launch a few teaser trailers implying that the new version will be coming out soon, giving people a chance to sell their old units before the price drops. Number 2, let your current user base know before the general public. Now, this can be achieved by using things like Discord or mailing lists. For example, recently, Dirty Wave announced their new M8 Mk2, and the only reason why I know about it is because it was announced in the Discord and I got access to the pre-order. Perhaps Polyend could have done something similar and offered a pre-order for the inner circle of existing Play owners, so they felt taken care of. Finally, number 3. Instead of making the old Play cheaper, and I know this is going to piss a lot of people off, maybe they just should have made the Polyend Play Plus a bit more expensive, at least for a couple of months before announcing the price changes with ample warning. By keeping the original Play at the same price, the resale value wouldn't have taken that massive hit. Also, if they would have priced the Play Plus at say $200 or $300 more than the original, then a $400 upgrade path wouldn't seem that unreasonable all of a sudden. Kind of like what people do with their iPhones every year. Now these of course are just my musings, and I would love it if you would comment down below on what could have been done better, not only for Polyend, but for any other company out there who might be considering doing upgrade paths, which in this economy might prove to be a great way to access new versions to existing synths. If you're interested in buying either the original Play or the Play Plus, please consider doing so with my affiliate links below. It's a great way to support the channel since it doesn't add any cost to your purchase, and that really helps this channel to keep on thriving. As always, thank you so much for watching. I hope you found this video useful or at least entertaining. Have a great week. See you next time.